one of our agent of development. And this is how we can go through with the development cooperation. So what we think now is how we can manage the developers beyond aid. Now we think that also how we can deal in this development cooperation in the sense of knowledge sharing. So Indonesia now is with others development partners now, yeah, try to set up the mechanism for knowledge sharing as one of major way, yeah, to how to learn to share our experience to others, and we feel that that is more effective in terms of source of cooperation. So in this regard, two things that we have to aim how this knowledge sharing will be benefiting for us. One is for the to improve quality of planning and budget allocation. This is more internally for our national development agenda, and other is how benefit for international development fora. So we will aiming this knowledge sharing internally and internationally. And this is a vision and mission of our social and regional cooperation. So I think it's slightly different with India experience. We are putting more our cooperation in terms of partnership. Yeah. So partnership is, I think, is more important for us rather than maybe others goal, such as for trade. Yeah, because we are now not covering the trade issue on our scheme, and the mission is promoting the partnership. Yeah, so it is in line with the vision, and others is enhancing development cooperation, including economic cooperation, and increasing the last one, increasing national solidarity by utilizing the potential of each country for the common benefit. So that's why, as Madam General mentioned, that we also active in SHAPAC, yeah. So through that forum, we try to assist the Palestinians to have more better in managing their country, to others, to several programs. And this is for the framework of South-South cooperation. So the here in this box we found that actually 3 issues already set up by our Vice President. So the first one is the development issues. Yeah, this is covering the let's say the comparative advantage sector that could be a field that we can cooperate with other countries. Yeah, and another one is the good governance. Yeah, so we are playing more active program in the good governance and peace building. We have a lot of experience on that. And the third one is macroeconomic and microeconomic management as well. So this is actually 3 others main sector, that main area that we will work on that, because we feel that Indonesia have more experience, more comparative advantage on that. And the funding, yeah, actually we use also own resource funding as well as for the triangular cooperation. Also now we also encourage private sector here and CSO also to be more involved in this cooperation. And through that, as I mentioned in the previous slide, so those will be packed into kind of or we can extract the experience and will be shared to others, yeah. And we also promote this in the community of practitioners. And this is for the development stage, yeah. As I said to you that on the blueprint, yeah. Now we are in the last year for the first blueprint, and in this state we are actually focus on how we can revitalize our institutional framework. So we are more focusing on how we can let's say improve our coordination among the land ministry. Yeah. Also we try to set up how we can find the funding of this source of solution to set up the mechanism for funding, for coordination, yeah, for also for monitoring and evaluation system. And the next stage actually we already planned, but I think this is will be also prior to the next government. So we will have a president election on next June. So, but on the concept, actually we will let's say bring this also to the next candidate. Yeah, that the candidate can have more perspective on how we can cooperate with other countries to this mechanism. So this is for the role and function of a stakeholder. As I said to you that we are do not have a single entity to manage the South-South and the cooperation. We still have a team, national coordination, consists of 4 ministries. One is Ministry of National Development Planning, Governance, MOFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Ministry of Finance, and the last one is Ministry of State Secretariat. So, and each ministry have own function and role, but this coordination will be also involve other line ministry, yeah, as well as local government, private sector, and NGO. So on daily basis, we will manage this coordination, yeah, to the national team. So this is the structure of the NCT, National Coordination Team. So the steering committee is chaired by our ministry and Minister of Foreign Affairs, yeah, and we have 3 working group on that. So the first one is institutional framework, program funding, and the last one is MONEF and knowledge management. So although this is kind of not permanent institution, but we have very intensive coordination with those ministries, and we have also have secretariat to manage this coordination. Maybe it's not so in a good coordination, but I think we have a lot of achievement on how to have a coordinated program for the South-South cooperation. So as I said to you, this is the area that Indonesia will work on, the flagship program for development issues, good governance, and economic issues. So those actually will be derived with comparative advantage for each sector that we believe that that can be workable or doable in how to implement the program. So I think this is the stakeholder. Even though we still don't not have high involvement on the CSO or private sector, but they are not avoid, or they are not you know, they will be a part of this program, and they will not how can I say, they will not forget it in this program. So we will also inform, we will also ask them to more involved in this program. So as for example, for cooperation with Namibia, yeah, the cooperation was initiated by the university and followed by the involvement of private sector also in agriculture sector. So this is kind of example that private and CSO and academia also involved in this cooperation in Indonesia. So this is the funding, the mechanism of the funding of how Indonesia we will manage. Yeah. So as you can see, the funding mechanism, yeah, we will have our own resource from the national budget. We also use tribal cooperation, yeah, as a source of funding, as well as for the private sector also. So the most important of the form of cooperation is the demand driven. So we are also put highly demand driven is a way. Not only we offering the supply, but it should be based on their demand. Yeah. So this is, I think, the SOP. How can the other countries, yeah, can submit or propose their activities which will be cooperated with Indonesia. So this is also, I want to show that we spend almost $50 billion, yeah, to another countries, yeah, and I think this is not include for the contribution to others institutions, such as we contribute for the social facilities to the World Bank, to the social center, and also in terms of the humanitarian. So this is only for the social and social cooperation, yeah, which used by the own budget. And this is example what Indonesia do for the flagship program. So in agriculture sector, yeah, disaster risk management. Also, we have a lot of pilot project on that, on the democracy, yeah, the industry, infrastructure, and human development. So this is actually what we feel that we have comparative advantage on that, and we maintain this program in the next cooperation. So I think this is our experience for social development, which can share to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Khun Priyanto. The experience of Indonesia, actually, we share something together with Thailand. For example, we also have the line ministry. We provide it through many organizations, not just only Thailand. I think the procedure that you process the aid and also the cooperation with South also almost the same as Thailand. I think we can share later about this. May I go to our neighboring country, Malaysia, very close to neighboring country. And I think what Sachin pointed out at the beginning is very important. We would like to work with friends. We don't want to develop competitors. So I think this is the most important thing. Malaysia share border with us and share many things with us. So we would like to hear how Malaysia works on development cooperation and also the role of Malaysia in South-South so that we can work together in the future. South, please.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sripon. Let me try and make this bigger. Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come and share some thoughts about this very important topic. I am not going to be talking a lot about Malaysia's the programs or the direction of Malaysia's South-South cooperation. I think there is already some literature out there that you can look at. Actually, I tried to get into the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program website this morning. It was down, but hopefully by tonight, if it's okay, you can go to www.mtcp.gov.my, and you can look at a lot of. I think there's considerable sort of like information that is available out there to tell you what Malaysia has been involved in. But what I'm really interested to talk about today is this juncture that where Malaysia is now, right? Now Malaysia is an upper middle income country. If it continues to grow around 5.5 to 6% GDP per capita every year, it will become a high income nation by 2020, right? So this actually puts Malaysia in some kind of an interesting dilemma. On one hand, it wants to, all nations I think aspire to be high income. On the other, it realizes that maybe business will be different when it becomes high income nation, right? The way it looks at things, the way it operates itself, and many things would actually change. And in a way, its involvement in what is famously called as South-South cooperation might also have different sort of like perceptions or impact on participating countries. A lot of discussions have been going on in Malaysia about what is this, what is it really like to be a high income country. Do we change the way we do things? Do we continue? If we continue, what would be the impact? What would be the expectations, and so on and so forth? I think Malaysians are very clear about the fact that South-South, I think one of the things is that it is worried that if it becomes a high-income nation, would its friends consider it to be South, continue to be a member of the South countries, or is it in a different league, or how would people look at Malaysia and stuff like that? Okay, so that's the background of what I want to talk about. Now, I don't represent the government of Malaysia, so none of what you're listening this morning actually reflects the government's direction. That I have to make very clear. But what I can share with you is, is kind of what's happening on the ground and where some of these conversations might lead. Okay, what the government is going to adopt is not my place to say. But of course, we are working very closely. The Age Foundation has been working very closely with the Malaysian government to look into these issues. And hopefully we can work together with the government of Malaysia in trying to sort of like figure out what is the next step, where should Malaysia head, in the next 4 or 5 years, okay? Now, first of all, before I get to any of those, I pulled this sentence because I think it's very important. And within the Malaysian community who's working in the area of South-South cooperation, we call it the spirit of 1980. And this was the spirit that was presented, I think it was first presented in Australia, and then it was formalized in India. And this sentence says this, right? Part of the sentence actually. It says, provides Malaysia, wants to blah blah, get involved in South-South cooperation, so it could provide various forms of technical cooperation. Actually, I shouldn't be reading from the screen, I can't see. Should be reading from here. Provides various forms of technical cooperation in areas where Malaysia has the experience and expertise. Okay? So if you look at this sentence, this is a very important sentence that essentially draws the direction of Malaysia's South-South cooperation involvement. It says that it will provide, that is a very important word there, forms of technical cooperation, that's another important one, in areas where Malaysia has the experience and expertise. So basically what it's saying is that it is going to provide. It is not on the idea of partnership. It is actually giving. Though the idea of South-South cooperation is essentially a horizontal relationship, not a vertical one. But if you look at this sentence, it is actually quite vertical in many ways. It is going to give a lesser developed nation who might need to learn on these areas because they have probably not gone through this curve of development or whatever, and Malaysia wants to provide. Am I breathing too loud? Can you hear me without this? No, I need to use it, okay. I'll try not to breathe. If I turn blue, it's called the ambulance. So basically what it's really saying here is that it is giving, okay? And that's quite interesting because if you look at how Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program operates, it's really like that, right? What is it that we have in Malaysia and what is it that we can give you? It never thinks about how to go beyond that, to become a partner. I'll get to that slide later. But this is very important because it gives you the underlying kind of mentality of how South-South cooperation is being organized, right? So yes, I think Malaysia will probably ask, if TICA were to approach Malaysia, they'll probably ask you to give a proposal. And this is the reason why. Okay, so once you understand that, and then you can look at the areas of development, the areas of involvement that Malaysia's been involved or been providing, right? So it emphasizes human resources development through the provision of training, all right? And these are the areas. Okay, now why I'm putting down these areas is because it is actually quite interesting. After 40 years of the spirit of 1980, this has not changed. And I'll get back to you of why I think that's interesting. Because in 1980, Malaysia seriously positioned itself as to have some capacity or some leadership in these areas, right? But today, there are more. And it's never been included, quite frankly, okay? So it's never been revised, and really the spirit of 1980 is still very strong in the mentality of the people who are organizing South-South cooperation in Malaysia. Now, leave that aside. I'm giving you, a very general background of what it is and what they are doing and what they continue to do. Now I want to talk a little bit about future direction. I want to go back to my introduction of saying where Malaysia is at, right? So Malaysia understands, actually, that it cannot continue doing, or organizing South-South cooperation like it has always been doing. The reason being is because, it's probably going to move into a high income nation. Secondly, it needs revision anyways. So even if Malaysia doesn't become a high income nation, whatever that's 25,000 GDP per capita PPP or however you want to define that, it needs to revise it anyways because they all realize that it's a little bit outdated, right? So first of all, we're talking about a new framework. We are talking about that very first slide, change of that mentality. That mentality to provide needs to be changed, right? So what is that new framework? Okay, so this is where, this is where it really needs to rethink the fundamental approach to development cooperation, right? It needs to get into the direction of development partnership versus this sharing of experience. What does it mean? It means basically that Malaysia cannot continue thinking that it is there to provide. It has to understand that development is a two-way thing. And I'm really thankful for what Sachin had mentioned previously. Because if you think that development cooperation is a one-way street, then the argument about, we've helped develop these people in Vietnam to develop a better rice strategy and whatever, now they're becoming a competitor. Of course, that sentiment will come up because you have the mentality of thinking that it's a one-way street, I am helping you. But if it's a development partnership mentality where it's not just a one-way kind of relationship, where it is multiple-way relationship, then we can think about how we can strategize development and how it will be continuously beneficial to both nations or more than two nations if the relationship involves more than two nations. So this is where Malaysia is at. They need to rethink the strategy. It is not about inviting people to Malaysia to look at their banking sector, because it realizes that if it continues to do that, then it will be in competition with these countries, right? How many regional banking centers can you have in Southeast Asia? 1, great. 2, nice. 3, a little bit too many, right? So now you have Singapore, and then you have Malaysia. So it's really, does Malaysia want to develop Thailand as a financial center as well? Seriously? Maybe not, right? Because then it will be in conflict of what it already has, if the mentality is a one-way direction. But if it's a development partnership mentality, where there is a mutual benefit and looking into areas of expansion, because even the banking sector is expanding, it's not a stagnant sector, right? So then there is this mutual benefit. How do they do that? They need to strategize, okay? They cannot just look at what some of their experiences and say, oh, we can share this because we've done well, or at least we think we've done well, right? But we development practitioners know that it's very difficult for you to share a model from one country to another, because there's no one model that fits all. Societies are different, conditions are different, history is different, political leadership, blah, 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 so on and so forth. Everything is different. You might have some kind of an example, but you cannot implant these models, right? And we know that for sure. So if Malaysia continue to just look at some of its experiences and think that it wants to share this, it is fighting a losing battle, quite frankly, if it wants to achieve that. Because quite frankly, if you look at some of Malaysia's, I think I can consider as an excellent sort of like example, which is land for the landless, for instance, They developed this program in the 1960s, where they actually give land to people. They're not farmers, they turn these people into farmers. And they set up this industry, and today you probably know it as Felda. And now these people, the next generation of Felda settlers are doing very, very well economically. They've developed capacity in terms of agriculture, so on and so forth. And their kids even have graduated into other areas. I mean, they don't necessarily continue to be farmers, right? So Malaysia's strategy, in developing Felda, land for the landless, for instance, was a successful one. It has brought down the poverty levels, so on and so forth. However, how many countries can you just, take this model and apply to, right? There's issues in terms of land rights, there's so many different issues, I don't even want to get into that. And that's exactly the reason why you cannot copy this model in many countries, okay? So anyways, that's the point. So you need to strategize. You need to look at, Malaysia needs to look at its own developmental needs with its partners. So moving away from just sharing its experience and telling them that this has worked and maybe you should look into this model and put it in your country, but really understand what their developmental needs is and merge it with their own developmental needs. Now what do I mean by that? If Malaysia is doing well in cultivating this, just for the sake of conversation, cultivating this, excellent crop of rice, for instance, and it's the world leader, it doesn't mean that it has to stop there. There must be, better ways of managing this, more environmental friendly and stuff like that. So development doesn't end at that curve where you make more money. So people often make that mistake, right? Development economies sometimes make that mistake. They think, let's develop something so that these people get more money, and then when we've achieved that, great. It's a nice story of development, but development economies also take into consideration of, the negative impacts to environment, for instance. I mean, you can't just go chop trees and open new paddy fields. It's not, it will have negative impacts as well. So those are the areas where Malaysia also needs to get into. It has probably moved to a stage where it has arrived to a certain doubling or tripling of its income, but it cannot stop there. So the question of sustainability comes into picture, right? As well as, and this is the other thing, when it's strategized, then hopefully it can internationalize MTCP. What do we mean when we say internationalizing MTCP? Now MTCP, by the way, is the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program. It is the single largest, body that organizes South-South cooperation. Not the only one, but it's the biggest. Okay. Now MTCP now is very local based. So for instance, if MTCP wants to partner with TICA, chances are they'll bring Thais to Malaysia and train them in Malaysia because of this mentality of we want to teach you. Internationalizing MTCP means that MTCP Malaysia has also to go out and learn from TICA, right? Okay, there are certain things that you can probably learn from us, but we are also interested to learn from you. Now that's where the strategizing bit comes in. It cannot just be an open field where we provide everything that we think we are good at. Because if you don't strategize and you just basically, throw your seeds everywhere, chances are the impact of your work is going to be very low. And then the third is to maximize these relationships, right? These partnerships. It has to be basically output driven for all partners in the relationship. It cannot be input driven. It cannot be, okay, I'm coming to this workshop so that I can learn something from you. It has to be, what can I contribute to this workshop as well? What is my output in this partnership, in this development partnership, right? So it changes this whole sentiment of Malaysia being the donor and, Laos being the recipient. Because the recipient will always come in with the mentality of what can I get, not what can I give. Now this whole idea of rethinking and re-strategizing is both ways, right? So we have to move away from recipients thinking that they need to just input and donors thinking that they need to just output. It has to basically be output driven by both, actually input and output by all parties in the relationship, right? So of course then, this is where I'm adding, for instance, if you look back at my second slide, I mentioned some of these things that Malaysia decided that they wanted to share in 1980, and I say it's outdated. If you look at Malaysia today, halal food industry and Islamic banking are probably the two main areas where Malaysia is very niche. It's a world leader in Islamic banking. It's one of the only two countries in the world that holds the largest patent for halal food. And halal food is worth trillions of dollars every year. I mean, I did this calculation, and I was just, I did this calculation for Mindanao, and if you just imagine that people in Mindanao only spend $1 a day on halal food, which is a very conservative calculation, they'll be spending close to $3 million every year. And that's just Mindanao. And in this whole Islam, sort of like Islamic world, there's only two countries that's looking in this seriously, this Malaysia and Indonesia, right? So there's a huge market and there's a lot that can be shared and can be expanded, but it's really not including it, as part of its, MTCP thinking, for instance, because it's all in 1980, Malaysia was not a player for halal food. Yeah. Okay. Now, there's also another sort of like, avenue where Malaysia needs to look into. Now, its South-South cooperation model that it has today is very driven by the government. It feels like this is a responsibility, right? Now, the way I look at this, I'm trying to move away from talking about, on the language of, it's our responsibility to develop, to help other people to be developed. Now, there's nothing wrong with that sentiment. In fact, I think it's a noble sentiment. However, if you start from that basis, you will always put yourself higher, right? because I'm helping you. It's like, now I have this chip on my shoulder that, that suddenly I'm a little bit richer, so I have to do all of this. That is against the grain of development economics, quite frankly. Because in development economics, we understand that we all live together, right? The rich, the poor, the middle income, the low income, whatever, however, upper middle income, high income, super high income, or however you want to define states, there's always this two-way relationship that makes the state or the person or whoever who he is, So basically, government cannot take this responsibility alone. It has to foster relationship, and especially foster relationship with the private sector. Now, why do I say this? Because some private sectors are even bigger than governments. We know this for sure. Some private sectors have more money to spend every year than nation states, right? So their impact and their influence for international development, for diplomacy, is extremely high, right? So that's why it needs to work with the private sector. However, the problem is that when it works with the private sector before, it is always on the basis of how can we expand networking for this private sector to start investments and businesses in this lower income nation, for instance. I'll go to a body in my next slide. And Malaysia has set up this body exactly just to do that. So Malaysia, Africa, for instance, there is actually a body that the private sector gets involved in. But seriously, their approach is how can we use South-South cooperation to develop business linkages and business networking. That is okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to go beyond that. We have to go coherence and consistency in terms of policies of the government. So if the Malaysian government talks about prosper Thai neighbor, that's this big thing in Malaysia, right? The spirit of 1980 includes this idea of prosper Thai neighbor. We all need to develop together. Now that is a noble idea, but you cannot prosper your neighbor if you send your you set up this networking for your multinational. They open up a company in Africa and they start paying women and children $1 a month. That's against the grain of prospering Thai neighbor. This is where I say that, I'm not saying it's happening rampantly, but what I'm saying is that there's no real coherence in terms and consistency in terms of what on one hand it talks about South-South cooperation, and on the other hand, how it is being rolled out and applied, And in fact, I wrote a dissertation about how, Petronas's investments in Sudan actually helps prolong the civil war between South and North Sudan, right? So it is against the grain of peace development. It operates using that platform, but it goes against the grain. Because private sectors feels that once they are once they have set up these linkages, they probably can do whatever. Alright, so how do we create this coherence and consistency between government policies and the private sector? That's an important way of moving forward. Which brings me to my second point, which we need to create in Malaysia, we need to create a platform for responsible and sustainable investments, right? And that should be the coherence of this whole idea of South-South cooperation. A win-win all for everyone, right? It is okay that these two governments are sitting together and talking about expansion of businesses and investments, but also these governments needs to sit down and create a platform where there is some kind of monitoring for these private companies so that they don't totally manipulate this agenda of South-South, this noble agenda of South-South cooperation, and make it into a big money-making scheme, which is fine, but it has to be done in a very responsible way. That's my point. So the thing is, the current model of promoting trade and economic relations as well as investments needs to be expanded. It cannot just stop on promoting trade. We have to talk about sustainability and stuff like that. Okay, so and then the third point is that Malaysia needs to think about moving beyond human capital. So now essentially what it's doing is capacity building, right? Or at least most of it is about capacity building. So whatever you talk about, and it believes in that, which is fine, which is true. Human capital is very important. However, human capital is only half the story, right? It is a nice story to talk about, but it's half the story. So, current modalities needs to be further refined and expanded in critical areas such as addressing the digital divide, peace building, poverty eradication, governance on global trade and investment. So you can continue capacity building in these areas. However, it's also important to think about how you need to set up platforms, how you need to sort of like lobby for an agreement, for some kind of a standard, acceptance of modalities of work and stuff like that. If Malaysia stopped only at capacity building, like I said, is half the story. So you can develop capacity, and I'll show you some examples after this. You can develop a capacity for a group of people, but with that capacity, it's not enough for them to develop industries. You cannot say that, I've taught you how to fish, therefore you can just go out and catch all the fish you want, right? I mean, if the world is that simple, then we've solved Africa's problem a long time ago. Okay, so now, if you look at some of this I'm bringing some examples because what I'm saying here is that there's lessons to be learned from some of these examples, and these are, this is just very, very few. There's only 3 examples. So you see MTCP in ASEAN, MTCP ASEAN, Japan tripartite. There was a program that ran for 7 years. It aimed at accelerating the pace of reconstruction and rehabilitation in Cambodia, where Malaysia's technicians provided skills training to war veterans, okay? Which is fine, capacity building, right? No problems. We all can be very proud of this. However, very little we know today of how many of these war veterans actually manage to set up their own SME in the field of electrical engineering or automotive engineering, metal fabrication, so on and so forth. Because what Malaysia does is only give the capacity and then it goes out. Right? Now what I am saying is that if Malaysia were to partner with corporations and NGOs, it can expand this to have a longer sort of like a larger extent of, and then we can talk about impact later, after lunch, but that will give you some basis of how you want to see the impact, of how you can see that this program has really benefited the society. Okay, this is the second one, which is the South-South Cooperation established in 1992 to MASCOP, to promote trade and economic relations. So if you look at some of the things that MASCOP has done, is it has established Malaysia-Chile Business Council and Malaysia-South Africa Business Council in Malaysia, as well as Malaysia Business Center in Kampala in Uganda, which is great. But again, this involvement, this MASCOP sort of like initiatives are essentially at the level of expanding trade and investments. So it builds networking with business communities and stuff like that, so that Malaysian businesses can go there and expand investment, and maybe they can come to Malaysia and set up their shop as well. But imagine if we have some kind of and I'm not saying that MASCOP companies are setting up sweatshops around the world. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that little we know about what are these investments and how and what kind of business they're in and what are the impact to environment, for instance. We know very little of that, simply because it wasn't part of the objective. The objective is to set up this networking for business and investment, and that's about it. So we've done that, clap, 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 everybody is happy, South-South, everybody smiles, fine. 10 years down the road, we just realize that we have a terrible haze, right? And how do we deal with that? So this is again half the story, right? It's not full story. And then if we look at another example, Malaysian Agriculture Research Institute provided expertise to Malawi to establish PMO and training of locals and the various aspects of integrated farm management. Again, which is great because Malaysia has experience in terms of this, so on and so forth. But again, you develop this capacity, there's absolutely no NGO sort of like involvement in this. How these project management offices can really have a positive impact to the community is questionable. We don't know. Because the box has been ticked, we've taught them, and now they should be smart and they can solve all the problems, So that's the story of Malaysia. And that's where we are, and we hope that we can move into a more positive direction. I do not have an answer to all the questions that I have raised. I have raised pretty a few expectations, and these are aspirations that is within some of this, very good sort of like civil servants who aspire to see Malaysia being more actively, positively involved in South-South cooperation. Again, I don't speak on behalf of the government of Malaysia. What's going to happen 5 years down the road, I don't know. We'll probably have another conference and I'll talk about something else then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harisong. Actually, you share some experiences with Professor. When we teach, we always ask questions, and then we always tell students that we do not have answer, and students have to answer the question in the future. I think I like your presentation so much, particularly when you talk about changing perspective. I think that is the most important thing when we talk about development and development cooperation. So far, our perspective are shaped by something, and I think it's the time that we have to change the perspective. Again, another important thing that you raised is also the impact, the follow-up program. I think many countries, particularly Asian providers, we start providing development assistance, I think continuously, 10 years already, let's say Thailand, but I think it's the time that we have to look back and try to think about the follow-up program and try to see how the impact is. And I think this is another important thing that we are going to discuss this afternoon. The time is almost 12:30. I would like to ask a permission from the panel, from everybody, that I would like to extend the time, maybe 30 minutes more for the presentation of Ajahn Pakpum, and then a short Q&A after the session. Is that all right for all of you? Yeah? So I move on to Ajahn Pakpum, please. So as we are hosts, so we go as the last.
Thank you, Ajahn Sitipon. You ask people that is it all right to extend the time? I don't think anyone can say no. Anyway. Okay. It is not a good time because everyone is hungry. I think I have to be quite quick and to be fast. You have listened to presentations of 4 speakers already. They brought up the issue of South-South cooperation based on the experience of Thailand, by Director General of TICA, and also by India, Sachin, and Malaysia and Indonesia already. I don't know, to who I should represent, but finally I have come up with the idea that I should represent the Southern providers as a whole. Anyways, So my presentation is focusing on South-South cooperation in general, but of course it applies somehow to Asian providers as identified in the theme of this conference, this workshop. This is the outline of my presentation. There are four issues that I want to discuss about. South-South cooperation and international development doctrine. I try to see what as academician how we can contribute to the ideas of international development, looking from the perspective of South-South cooperation. The second one is motivation to give aid. There are some studies, trying to analyze the motivation of southern and northern providers to give aid, and finally came up with the idea that they are the same. They are not different in terms of motivation. Quality of South-South cooperation is of in-question. Many people criticize that South-South cooperation has inferior in terms of quality compared to North-South cooperation, but it is not necessarily the case. Challenges and way forward. I will try to throw some issues into the discussion in this workshop. Anyway, let me be quick. If you can, many of you who study development economics may have seen this figure before. This figure is proposed by Professor Eric Torbeck, a well-known development economist. He tried to analyze the relationships between foreign aid and development doctrine. What he tried to say is that in each particular period, the development doctrine, development goals, and development doctrine can be analyzed from the relationship between each elements in this figure. For example, starting from development problems, situation, and needs in particular period, you come up with development goals, definition of development, and finally come up with some development policies and strategy. And of course, to come up with development policies and strategy, you should have development theories and hypotheses, and built up by development models. And of course, to come up with good development models and theories, you should have data system and measurement of performance. What I try to say here is that, according to Professor Eric Torbeck, foreign aid can contribute to the ideas, and the development doctrines of the academic world, as well as influenced by the development doctrine. For example, if you remember the writing by Professor Arturo Escobar and his associates, who take the postmodernist approach to deconstruct the development discourse, he focused on the very key or important roles played by foreign aid industry, because foreign aid industry influence a lot on the definition of development, on the definition of on the ways that development works. So this is what we learn from this framework. And the thing is that I have done a lot of review of literature. My personal observation is that I didn't see much of the writing about the contribution of South-South cooperation in this framework. So when we talk about foreign aid contributing to the development doctrine of international development community, little is known about the role of South-South cooperation, Southern providers. To what extent Southern providers contribute to the knowledge of development, the contribution of Southern provider contributing to the definition of development or development goals in this framework. It is not yet known. So the studies that try to elaborate the role of South-South cooperation and Southern providers in contributing to the development doctrines of international development community is called for. So, are Southern and Northern providers different in terms of their motivation to give aid? Actually, when we talk about the motivation of donors to give foreign aid, there are three perspectives that try to analyze the determinants or the motivation of donors to provide aid to recipient countries. There are three perspectives, okay? First one is the so-called donor interest perspective. Second one is recipient needs perspective. The third one is a recipient merit perspective. For the donor interest perspective, it is very easy to understand. It is said that aid is driven mainly by donors' interest. Donor interest can be identified in terms of political, economic, or commercial interest, right? The second one says that aid is given to meet recipient needs. If recipient countries are in poverty, you have to give aid to address the poverty of recipient countries. And also, there's the idea that you should provide aid to countries which have a very good policy or sound institutional arrangement in order to make it effective. For example, aid should not be given to corrupt government. It should be given to the countries that promote trade openness. It should be given to the country that promote poverty reduction in order for aid to be functioning effectively. That are all perspectives to analyze the motivation to give it. However, so far there is no convincing evidence to show that Southern providers are different from Northern providers in terms of motivation to give it. A lot of criticisms going on, saying that Southern providers are not concerned much with the environmental issues or institutional issue of recipient countries. However, the evidence so far has shown that, of course, Northern providers also are not concerned much in this issue as well, something like that. So the most recent studies by Dreher, published in World Development Journal, confirm this. And actually, my current research on the aid allocation of Thailand also confirmed this. Okay, so what I want to say in this slide is that the criticisms raised by Northern providers, saying that Southern providers are undermining the development agenda provided by the OECD is not reliable because they are not different. It's the quality of South-South cooperation necessarily was that North-South cooperation. There might be some critics, saying that the ODA programs provided by Southern providers are inferior in terms of quality of the program. However, the report, the research conducted by ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council of the UN, confirmed that it's not necessary. So, why? They conducted the research in 2008 and found several points that, in fact, South-South cooperation programs might be better in terms of quality, even better than North-South cooperation programs. First point is that policy conditionality and procedural conditionality. In terms of policy and procedural conditionalities, it is found that Southern providers have no or very limited conditionalities. in terms of policy or procedural conditionalities compared with northern providers. This enhances the recipient's ownership, in fact. Of course, in some cases, it's not good, right? In terms of, for example, if you don't have the requirement on environmental standard, it may, destroy the natural resources of recipient countries. But in general, the report by ECOSOC said that it enhances recipients' ownership. And of course, without conditionalities, policy conditionalities, procedural conditionalities, the recipient countries find it very low cost, to access to Southern providers' assistance. Concessionality of loan ODA of Southern providers is not necessarily lower than Northern providers as well. If you take a look at this table, I highlighted, look at the red line which focus on Asian providers. If you look at the, two last column, you will see that in fact, Southern providers do provide loan ODA that meet a properly, accepted standard of 25% of grant element, 25% of or more. To be qualified as for the assistance, to be qualified as the ODA, for the loan assistance to be qualified as ODA, you should have at least 20%, 25% of grant element. And if you look at this, most of providers, South providers, already achieve that level. It's even higher than 25% actually, their loan ODA. For the modality, modalities of Southern providers are very diverse actually. Some of them focus on budget support and debt relief. Some of them focus on the project-based assistance. There are various ways to provide ODA. However, for the big country that provide budget support and debt relief, the transfer of the budget from donor country to recipient country to the budget of the recipient country enhances accountability and national ownership of the latter. For the project of assistance, of course, there are various ways to provide projects, so it is difficult to follow up, and there's a problem of transparency and accountability going on. Priority sector, North-South cooperation, according to the report, tries to focus on budget support, debt relief, and social sector in particular. But in general, South-South cooperation focus more on infrastructure development, productive sector investment, with the strong belief that providing basic infrastructure can enhance some basic or foundations to generate growth. So they believe in spillover effect in this sense. In terms of predictability, many people tend to think that ODA by Southern provider, because it is very fragmented, it has the lesser degree of predictability. But the report confirmed that it is not necessarily the case. It is found that many of Southern providers do provide a multi-year commitment of development assistance. For the project to be predictable, you have to have a multi-year commitment to provide ODA. And some of Southern providers do provide assistance on a project-by-project basis. However, before the project is ended, they still keep going on providing budget. So it's not necessarily that aids from Southern providers are not predictable. There may be some project that has problem of that. Okay. In terms of value of money of development cooperation, ECOSOC also try to study that the value of money in the perception of recipient countries, the value of money of Southern providers is better or worse than Northern providers development program. And they took the case study of Chinese development program in Africa as a case study, and they found that in fact the value of money of development cooperation of their case study program is of China is actually even better than some of the Northern providers. Why? Because disbursement procedures of Chinese development program is faster and less costly. Second thing is that procurement procedures of Chinese development program is easier to access, and of course it has some little harmonization with recipient system, because China still relies on their own system to provide ODA costs, but it's not necessary to be less effective in that sense. Tying aid. China provides a lot of tie aid, of course we all know that, but it's not necessary that tying aid will come up with overpriced, poor quality or substandard goods and services. In general, it is found that the program taken as a case study, is perceived as performing better in terms of value of money. Labor cost is lower, quality of materials provided is also better, productivity of personnel is also better. So the conclusion of that report is that it's not necessary that the ODA program provided by Southern providers is inferior to Northern providers. Of course, this is not generalized, okay? It's just based on the case study. So this is my last slide. I put some challenges and way forward here. Actually, there are many points, which are consistent with all the presenters, previous presenters. To have, to be able to share knowledge, as many people have mentioned, to be able to share knowledge among Southern providers in the framework of South-South cooperation. Reliable and comprehensive data is very necessary. As Sachin, Dr. Sachin mentioned this in Peking, and I myself also supported that. We should have some data on South-South cooperation, more data on South-South cooperation, so that the academia can do something. Without the data, the academics cannot study. The think tanks, they have to rely on the data, right? So the think tanks themselves should be, the contributor of the data. There are many ways to do that, but at least we have to have some reliable and comprehensive data on South-South cooperation. So far, we have very limited information on that. The systematic monitoring and evaluation system is necessary actually. However, the question is what should be used as criteria or indicators to monitor and or to evaluate the progress or effectiveness of South-South cooperation program. I think this question should be answered. I think in this workshop also we try to answer this question, to address this question. Southern providers, as many people have mentioned, have a diversity in terms of size of ODA budget, in terms of aid architecture. Some countries, aid architecture of some countries is very fragmented. It's not coordinated, and many Southern providers have diversity in terms of modalities of aid provision. Look at this. Some countries rely on projects, some countries, provide in-kind technical cooperation, a lot of things. The question is that keep diversity in mind. How can we come up with, a good set of indicators which captures diversity, but not losing it? Of course, the beauty of South-South cooperation, Professor Siripon has mentioned several times that the beauty of South-South cooperation is diversity. But we try to do, what we try to do is the indicators to measure effectiveness. So our goal is, how to capture diversity, how to establish the indicators, that capture diversity and not losing it. This is the last point. The last point is that this one I also mentioned in a workshop in Beijing, and Sachin supported this. I think for South-South cooperation, to keep going on and to enhance the capacity of South-South cooperation in the context of international development community, should we have some institution? Institution might be a very strong word, but at least somehow we should have some facility that facilitates the exchange of knowledge and experience among Southern providers. Luckily, in the final conclusion of the workshop in China, it was written that this is necessary as well. So it will be injected into the high-level meeting in Mexico as well. This is what I want to present. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ajahn Pakum. I think we have 15 minutes for Q&A, so I will go for the Q&A by now. If you have any question or any comments to individual speaker or to the whole panel, please take this time. Yes, if there is, please. It seems that everybody is hungry. Yes, and here, please.
Okay, I'll just speak loudly. I had a question for Paprianto. In many presentations on Indonesia's infrastructure for South-South and triangular cooperation, it seems like you have a very sophisticated management and coordination system amongst all the various ministries and departments. And we were, in the break earlier, we were talking about the challenges of that in Thailand and Malaysia and elsewhere. About the power struggle, different priorities between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Planning Ministry or Finance, etc. How have you managed to address those? I mean, is there any tension? Has there been problems of implementation, or is your blueprint where you have this coordinating committee, is that working very well? I'd just be interested to hear a bit more about the challenges you faced in the coordination.
I would like to correct one or two more questions, and then we go to the speaker. Any more questions or comments, please? No? Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Tom Bilo from UNDP, and sorry to be late to the meeting. But just 2 points, because also I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole of the afternoon session. But just to say, on the point that came out of the Beijing or Peking meeting around a network being established to look at these forms of indicators and performance measures around South-South, the UNDP stands very much ready to support that network, and I know that there are donors who are already expressing interest in it. And obviously the high-level meeting in Mexico presents a unique opportunity to get visibility to that initiative. And I just wanted to sort of reflect on the presentation we've just had, which I think has given us a really strong case to move away from the question of whether we can measure Southern providers by North-South performance standards. Because what you've actually done is deconstruct those North-South standards and say, actually there's a bigger question here, which is how do we measure development cooperation effectiveness as a whole? And I think that's a reflection that also we should take to the discussions around performance measures for South-South, which will surely inform not just South-South, but North-South as well.
Any more question or comments? If not, I will turn to Priyanto and then other presenters if there is any more comments. Yes, Priyanto, please.
Yeah, thank you. So, for Antia, yes, in fact, it's not so easy to manage manage the coordination actually. But we at the beginning have already set up the mechanism, and if I can say to you that we in terms of the planning and budgeting, actually we have a solid mechanism that every line ministry should in line with their the core function of each ministry. So we agree that we will not overshadow for each other. So each line ministry will play as their role, but Bapanas actually has the main function to coordinate all the line ministry in terms of how to implement the development. So in this regard, the coordination itself will be also handled by the steering committee. So as you can see in my slide that each line ministry has own as vice minister that we always meet annually to let's say to discuss the achievement or the plan what will be implemented in the some period. So this is kind of how can we manage, and also through this team actually as a chair of this team, Bapanas always provide some funding to make sure that the implementation of the coordination will be in place. And for the implementation, actually also will follow of this coordination mechanism. So we let each ministry to implement their program, but their program will be coordinated in Bapanas, in our ministry, because as you know, for development for the implementation of the program, so each line ministry will go to Bapanas first to discuss what the program will be implemented, and there is a bilateral meeting among line ministry, our ministry, Bapanas, and Ministry of Finance, which will decide whether this program will be implemented and funding properly.
Thank you. Is there any? Yes, Sushila, please.
This is not a question, but it's the issues or the topics that I always question, because we do talk a lot about aid for development. But in the past, I think about 5 years, aid for trade has been recommended by the WTO. And many countries now talk about aid for trade. Actually, I agree with Dr. Sachin that it's a result of aid for development to help the country to do trade, not aid for trade. But some countries like China, in Busan, announced clearly that they do aid for trade. So I think maybe this is the issues that we have to bear in our mind to do South-South cooperation. What exactly what we want to do? Aid for development or aid for trade?
Thank you. Is there any more comments or questions? For speaker, if you would like to respond. Yeah, please.
Just have a quick question. I would like to know more how Indonesia and Malaysia create a mechanism for engaging private sector into development cooperation. I would like to know more about these things.
Indonesia and Malaysia, Priyanto and Harisal.
I think very quickly, I mean, it's a very There's a very long answer to your question, and I don't think I should do that now. Very quickly, I think we have to look at the history of the period of Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia, and how he was very convinced about aid for trade, right? And Prime Minister Mahathir, former Prime Minister Mahathir, believed that if you solve the economy problem, you will solve 70-80% of your development issues. I think he still believes that. So there was very strong political will in Malaysia. Even at one point, the Malaysian Foreign Affairs had changed its objective to Malaysian Foreign Business Affairs, and that happened, I think, late 1980s. So to quickly answer your question, there was a very strong political will, and everything was basically driven from top down, and the structure was developed based on that. But I think that's changing now. But that's essentially how the business or the trade sort of like factor came into development, and how other structures kind of developed it was essentially based on that.
Yeah, for Indonesia case, actually, we are in the very initial stage to invite more active in the private sectors. But in our experience, our national coordination team, actually, we facilitate some private sector to do on the South-South cooperation. But since we still absence of the regulation of how can they let's say play more active in terms of how they can follow our policy. So I see that now we only give the facilitation to them. But currently we are still working on how to setting their involvement through the regulation, and the most important also, we still waiting the grand design, because how involvement of the private sector also include in the grand design.
So Shinpi, you want to respond to Khun Suchada comments?
Yeah. Sure, thank you. I think just half a minute, and I would like to make just 2 points. One, not a sort of summary, but out of this discussion and what observation Madam had. I think first point is that we need to appreciate that South is not a homogeneous entity. So is South-South cooperation. It's not a homogeneous entity. South-South cooperation providers are at different stages. As came out, Indonesia is more into knowledge sharing, knowledge partnerships. Malaysia pointed out more about the issue of capacity building. And there were examples in my presentation about the project sharing, project transfer. So that way you see all of them at different stages. Now in this context, we need to appreciate that the Busan summit, I do not have specific problems with the DAC principles or DAC rules and regulations. Problem is that they dominate our imagination. And in absence of alternative vocabulary, alternative terminologies, alternative ideas, we need to get into the literature. So if we have to look for literature on South-South cooperation, we would end up with world development. We would end up with literature which borrow from North-South paradigm. So we need to evolve, and academics and academic leaders would have the role to come up with alternative ideas. So aid for trade, if it is coming in, it's a concept which Western agencies suggested for bookkeeping, just to ensure more market access. And China's interest for accessing import market combines very well with this idea of accessing market through aid for trade. So I think we would have to constantly think in terms of creating our own vocabulary, creating our own ideas, imaginations and terms, so that alternative paradigm from South-South cooperation, as we are saying, we go beyond words. We go beyond saying that we are different, but how, that is to be spelled out. So aid for trade and other such examples should still challenge us to create an alternative paradigm.
Thank you. I think I have to conclude this session because of the time. And I think for this session, we learn a lot from each other, from experiences and the pattern that countries have conducted a program. As many people addressed during this session, alternative is the most important thing. Alternative that give the new path for us to think beyond aid and also development and also the regime which has been set up for a long time. Of course, we will not have some solution today, but I hope that this morning session and the coming afternoon session will open a new way for us to think about that. So everybody, please join me to thank all three speakers, Dr. Sachin, our colleague from Indonesia, Priyanto, our colleague from Malaysia, Harisal, and also my colleague, Ajahn Hakpum. Thank you so much. Before we go to lunch, actually, I'm not good in ceremony. I forgot two things, and I would like to apologize for that. First, I forgot to take a picture for all of us, so we will take a picture together. Second, I also forgot to give appreciation thanks to Kun Suchada, so I would like to do it now. Yeah. And everybody, please join me for the photo, and also thank you for Kun Suchada. Everybody, please, can have a picture together. But student also, please come. Yeah. That's all now? Okay, thank you. So we have lunch outside. The lunch is provided for everybody, so please go to the 5th floor. Yeah, we will lock the room. Yeah, you can leave things here, we will lock the room. But not your money.
ก็ฝากพี่แอลแล้วถ้าอีกฝากใคร เนี่ยเบอร์นี้เบอร์นี้เบอร์นี้โปรเจกต์เป็นที่ออกมาที่กัปตันได้มาป่ะเนี่ยวันนี้ที่เนี่ยคือ